My name is Marisol E. Trent, and I am 31 years old. My boyfriend texted me, I'm not your property. Stop calling me. I replied, understood. I'm not your girlfriend anymore. Don't come home. Locks changed. Silence. Hours later, Tearful calls. For context, my boyfriend Jared is 29. We've been together just under 3 years, living together for the last year in an apartment that's in my name. This all went down yesterday, and I'm still getting flooded with calls as I type this. Yesterday afternoon, Jared didn't come home from work like usual. No heads up, no running late text. Around 7 p.m., I called him, straight to voicemail. I texted, everything okay? No response. I waited another hour and tried again. Nothing. At 9:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. His text said, I'm not your property. Stop calling me. No explanation, no argument leading up to it, just that. Something in me snapped, but not the way it usually does. I didn't argue. I didn't ask where he was. I didn't apologize for something I didn't understand. I stared at the message for a solid minute and realized how familiar that tone was. The same one he used whenever he wanted to shut something down and make me the problem. So I replied, understood. I'm not your girlfriend anymore. Don't come home. Then I did something I'd never done before. I changed the locks. Before anyone jumps me for that, let me be clear. The lease is in my name. I pay the rent, utilities, everything. Jared contributes when he can, which somehow never aligns with rent being due. After I changed the locks, I put my phone face down and went quiet. No dramatic messages, no follow-up, just silence for 3 hours. Then the calls started. Missed call, voicemail, another voicemail. By midnight, my phone looked like a crime scene. I didn't listen to any of them yet because I could already picture the arc. Anger, disbelief, panic, then tears. Jared never skipped steps. By 12:30, I had 11 missed calls and 4 voicemails. The text started shifting tone too. Marisol, this isn't funny. You're being dramatic. Open the door right now. I stayed quiet. This wasn't me playing games. This was me finally taking him at face value. He said he wasn't my property. Fine. Property implies access, privilege, a shared space. You don't get those without respect. And the strange part is, I didn't feel wild. I felt calm. The kind of calm that shows up when you finally stop negotiating with the obvious. Around 1 a.m., I heard pounding. Not frantic yet. Controlled. Like he still thought this was a misunderstanding he could bully his way through. Marisol, he yelled through the door. Open it. I don't want to do this in the hallway. I didn't move. I stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, listening to the sound of someone who was used to being let back in. He tried the knob. Once. Twice. A third time, slower, like maybe patience would work where force hadn't. Then silence. I heard the unmistakable clack of his shoes being kicked off. You're being insane, he snapped through the door. We had a fight. Adults don't do this. We didn't have a fight. He sent a message. I accepted it. That's when the insults started. You're insecure. You're controlling. This is exactly why I needed space from you. I surprised myself by how steady I felt. Every word he said only confirmed something I'd been avoiding for months. At 1:18 a.m., his tone cracked. Marisol, he said, softer now. I don't have my charger. My stuff is in there. Still nothing from me. He called again. I watched the phone light up on the counter and vibrate itself quiet. At 1:34, I heard him slide down the door. The sound was unmistakable. His voice changed completely. I didn't mean it like that, he said. You know I didn't. That sentence had followed every boundary he ever crossed, and for the first time, I didn't respond to it. I slept on the couch, not because I was sad, but because the bedroom felt like neutral ground I hadn't earned yet. When I woke up, my phone showed 37 missed calls. I finally listened to the voicemails while making coffee. The first 2 were rage. The next 3 were disbelief. By the 6th, his voice had dropped an octave and slowed down, like he was suddenly choosing his words carefully. Marisol, please, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. You can't just lock me out. That one almost worked. Almost. At 8:46 a.m., there was another knock. Not pounding this time. Polite, controlled. The Jared that shows up when he needs something. I opened the door a crack, chain still on. He looked wrecked. Makeup smeared. Hair pulled into a rush ponytail. A hoodie I recognized. Mine, technically. He straightened the moment he saw me, anger flaring back to life. So you're really doing this, he said. You think you can just erase me overnight. I didn't erase you, I replied. You drew the line. He scoffed. That text was about boundaries. You're twisting it. No, I said. It was about disrespect. His eyes flicked past me into the apartment. I live here. You lived here, I corrected. With me. He crossed his arms. This is abuse, you know. Locking me out like this. That word again. Abuse. He loved weaponizing it whenever accountability got uncomfortable. I didn't touch you, I said calmly. I didn't threaten you. I didn't chase you. You told me to stop calling. I stopped everything. That's not what I meant, he snapped. I know, I said. You meant you wanted power without consequences. His face went red. You don't get to decide that. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something terrifyingly simple. I already had. He shifted tactics instantly. Tears welled up on command. I just needed space last night, he said softly. I didn't think you'd do something so extreme. I nodded. That's the problem. You never think I will. He stared at me, searching for the version of me that would cave. He didn't find her. And that's when he realized this wasn't a scare tactic. This was real. He didn't leave right away. Jared stood there in the hallway like the door itself was a negotiation. One hand on his hip, the other clutching his phone, eyes darting between my face and the chain like he was calculating angles. So what now, he asked. You just throw me out like trash. I'm not throwing you out, I said. I'm enforcing what you said. He laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. I needed one night without you blowing up my phone and suddenly I'm homeless. One night? I raised an eyebrow. You didn't say you needed space. You said I'm not your property and to stop calling you. He rolled his eyes hard. God, you're so literal. You know what I meant. That's the problem, I said. It's always what you meant, never what you actually said. He leaned closer, lowering his voice like that would soften the words. Open it. We'll talk inside. You're embarrassing yourself out here. Image control. Manage the scene. I'm not opening the door, I said. We can arrange a time later with someone present. His face shifted instantly. The calm cracked. So this is punishment, he snapped. Because I didn't check in like a good boyfriend. No, I said. This is me listening. He stared at me, stunned. You don't get to just end things by text. You ended them by text, I replied. I just confirmed it. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I said honestly. But that stopped being my responsibility when you decided I wasn't allowed to care. That landed harder than I expected. His mouth opened, then closed. For a second, there was real fear there. Not sadness about us. Fear about logistics. He swallowed. You're really serious, I nodded. For the first time? Yeah. He stepped back slowly like he didn't trust the ground anymore. You're going to regret this, he said, quieter now. Maybe. But the regret I felt staying had finally outweighed the fear of leaving, and that balance never tips back. He didn't go far after that. I watched from the peephole as he paced the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear, posture animated in the way I knew too well. I didn't need to hear the words to recognize the script. I was unstable. I was controlling. I had locked him out over nothing. I was already being cast as the villain in a story he was rehearsing in real time. Around noon, the text resumed. Different tone now. Calculated. My mom says what you're doing is illegal. Lauren says you can't just kick me out. You're proving exactly why I needed space. I didn't respond. An hour later, a softer approach. Marisol, please, I'm exhausted. I haven't slept. I just want to grab some clothes and my laptop. That one was reasonable. Carefully crafted, no accusations, no blame, just logistics. I replied with one sentence. We can arrange a time later with someone present. The typing bubble appeared instantly, disappeared, reappeared. So you don't trust me now? I stared at the screen, feeling strangely detached. This wasn't about trust. Trust assumes mutual good faith. What we had was pattern. I trust patterns. I typed back, not promises. That was the last message I sent. By mid-afternoon, he tried a different tactic. He showed up again, this time with Lauren in tow. Lauren stood a few steps back, arms crossed, clearly drafted as backup. Jared knocked softly, polite, like he was auditioning for reasonableness. Marisol, he said through the door, we can talk like adults. I stayed silent. Lauren cleared her throat. This is getting out of hand. You're making this worse than it needs to be. I finally spoke loud enough to be heard. I'm not escalating anything. I'm ending it. Jared's voice cracked. After everything I've put up with from you, that sentence sealed it. I realized then he wasn't upset about losing me. He was upset about losing access to the apartment, the stability, the version of me that always backed down. That night was the quietest the apartment had ever been. No footsteps, no sighs, no passive-aggressive cabinet slams. Just the hum of the fridge and my phone lighting up every 10 minutes, like it was trying to guilt me into something. I didn't answer a single call. At 9:42 p.m., he left a voicemail that finally made me sit down. "Marisol," he said, voice trembling. "I don't understand how you can do this so coldly. I loved you. I still love you. You don't just get to shut me out like I meant nothing." That was the most honest thing he'd said all day. Not about love, but about access. Because love to him had always come with conditions: availability, compliance, me staying reachable no matter how poorly I was treated. Around 11 p.m., another knock. Desperate this time. "Please," he cried through the door. "I'll say whatever you want. Just let me in." That sentence chilled me. Say whatever you want. Not talk it through, not fix it, just regain entry. "I'm not opening the door," I said calmly. There was a long pause. Then anger exploded. "You're doing this to punish me?" he screamed. "You think you're some kind of hero right now?" "No," I replied. "I think I finally listened." He sobbed loudly then, slumping against the door. For a moment, my chest tightened. This was the part where I usually folded, where I convinced myself his pain mattered more than mine. But something had shifted. I realized if I opened that door, I wasn't choosing compassion. I was choosing the cycle. "I hope you're safe tonight," I said. "But we're done." The crying stopped instantly. Then came silence. That's when I knew he'd finally understood. Not that I was mad, that I was unreachable. The next morning, the silence broke with a notification I didn't expect. An email subject line. "Can we please talk like adults?" I almost laughed. Jared hated email. Too permanent, too traceable. But that was exactly why he used it now. Texts hadn't worked. Calls hadn't worked. Tears hadn't worked. This was him reframing everything as reasonable. The email was long and carefully written. He said he felt unsafe, that he'd been blindsided, that he'd been emotionally abandoned. He used the word trauma twice. He also casually noted he might have to involve someone if I continued being uncooperative. That part finally made me angry. Not loud anger, focused anger. I replied with 3 sentences. "You told me to stop calling you. I did. You said you weren't my property. I agreed. We can coordinate pickup of your belongings with a third party. Nothing else." 10 minutes later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Then another call. Then another. Then a text from his sister, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I blocked the number. By early afternoon, Jared showed up again, alone this time. No friend, no backup. Just him standing in the hallway with red eyes and shaking hands. "I just need my laptop," he said through the door. "Please, I have work." I hesitated. Not because I doubted myself, but because this was the first request that wasn't about us. It was practical, human. "Leave," I said. "I'll bring it down." I put the chain back on, grabbed the laptop, and opened the door just enough to slide it out. Our fingers didn't touch. He looked up at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're really not coming back from this, are you?" I shook my head. "Neither are you." He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. His shoulders slumped. That was the moment the fight ended. Not with yelling. With acceptance he didn't ask for. That evening, I boxed up the rest of his things. Not dramatically. Methodically. Clothes folded, shoes paired, toiletries sealed. I realized how much space he'd taken up physically and mentally. Drawers I never used because they were his. Shelves I wasn't allowed to touch because he had an aesthetic. At 9:15 p.m., another message from a new number. "I'm not angry anymore. I just need to understand how it got this far." That annoyed me. Not because he wanted understanding, but because he was pretending this was sudden. I didn't reply. By midnight, there were no more knocks, no more calls, no more texts, just a normal, boring Tuesday stretching ahead of me. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed boring until it came back. I dropped the boxes at the storage unit we'd agreed on through a mutual friend. I didn't see him. That felt intentional on both sides. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said through actions. On the drive home, I replayed that original text one last time. "I'm not your property. Stop calling me." For weeks after, I'd wondered if I'd overreacted, if I'd taken it too far, if a normal girlfriend would have apologized, unlocked the door, smoothed it over. But here's the thing I finally understood. That text wasn't about independence. It wasn't about boundaries. It was about control without accountability. He wanted the freedom to disappear while keeping the safety net intact. He wanted reassurance on demand and consequences on delay. When I took his words literally, when I accepted them without negotiation, everything collapsed. The anger, the tears, the panic. Not because he loved me deeply, but because he never expected me to leave. I don't hate him. I don't think he's evil. I think he got comfortable in a dynamic where I always chased clarity while he held the exit door open just in case. I closed that door. Not with yelling, not with revenge, with silence. So yes, I changed the locks. I stopped answering. I meant what I said. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm waiting to be chosen. I already chose myself. The first full day without any attempt to reach me felt strange in a way I wasn't prepared for. Not empty, not sad, just unfamiliar. I woke up early out of habit, reached for my phone, then realized there was nothing to check. No missed calls, no new numbers, no carefully worded messages trying to sound reasonable. Just silence that didn't ask anything from me. I made coffee and stood in the kitchen longer than necessary, listening to the apartment exist on its own. The hum of the fridge, a car passing outside. Normal sounds I'd tuned out before because I was always bracing for the next interruption. That morning, nothing interrupted me. And that's when it hit me how long I'd been living in a state of low-grade alert, always ready to explain myself, soften my tone, or justify why caring didn't make me controlling. Over the next few days, the absence stayed consistent. No late-night emails, no surprise knocks, no mutual friends acting as messengers. It wasn't dramatic closure. It was the kind that sinks in slowly, the kind that forces you to sit with your own thoughts instead of reacting to someone else's emotions. I started noticing changes in myself I hadn't planned. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. I stopped wondering if I'd phrased something the wrong way. I stopped editing what I wanted to say before I even said it. When people asked me simple questions, I answered without scanning their faces for irritation. That felt new. That felt earned. A week later, the building manager emailed me to confirm the situation was resolved. Neutral, professional, no accusations. That told me more than any argument ever had. The outside world had already moved on. The crisis only existed as long as someone was feeding it. I heard small updates about him without asking. Mutual acquaintances mentioning he'd been having a rough time, that he was telling people he'd been blindsided, that he didn't understand how things escalated so fast. The wording never included what he said to me. It never included the text that started it all. It never included the moment he decided my concern was an inconvenience. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't need to. The truth doesn't need backup when you're no longer defending it. What surprised me most was that I didn't feel tempted to check in. Not once. The urge to rescue, to smooth things over, to make sure he landed okay, never showed up. That told me something important about the difference between attachment and responsibility. I hadn't been staying because I loved him. I'd been staying because I felt responsible for his comfort, even at the cost of my own. As the weeks passed, my routines became quieter but stronger. Grocery trips without anxiety. Evenings where I read without half listening for footsteps. Sleep that wasn't interrupted by the feeling I'd done something wrong and just didn't know what yet. I realized I wasn't healing from heartbreak. I was decompressing from constant emotional management. One night, while reorganizing a closet, I found an old hoodie of his I'd missed when boxing everything up. For a second, I just held it. Not because I missed him, but because it represented how much space he'd taken up without noticing. I folded it, placed it in a donation bag, and felt nothing dramatic when I let it go. That's when I knew this wasn't unresolved. It was complete. A month later, a mutual friend asked me carefully if I ever planned to talk to him again. I answered honestly, no. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to clarify. I'd already said everything that mattered through action. Silence, I'd learned, is only confusing to people who benefited from noise. Looking back, the thing that stayed with me wasn't the night he didn't come home, or the text, or even the hallway standoffs. It was how quickly my body relaxed once I stopped trying to be understood by someone who had no interest in understanding me. That kind of relief doesn't come from winning an argument. It comes from stepping out of a dynamic that was draining you quietly. I didn't disappear to make a point. I disappeared because staying would have required me to keep shrinking. And I'd already spent too much time learning how to do that. Now, when my phone stays silent, it doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels like peace. And peace, I've learned, is not the absence of conflict. It's the absence of having to prove that you deserve basic respect. That's the part no one prepares you for. When you finally choose yourself, nothing explodes. No music swells. No dramatic closing scene. Life just gets quieter, steadier, and unmistakably lighter. And once you experience that, you don't go back.